Hi everybody, I thought I'd come to you with another video on the sixth seal and the day of the Lord, but I believe there seems to be some correlation with the sixth seal and Yellowstone, as well as the Ezekiel 38 war, which is Gog and his allies attacking Israel, and I wanted to present that to you. I have been talking with my friend Caleb B, and I just posted his video on the sixth seal, but I thought I'd show you what I think I might be seeing with the correlation with Yellowstone and Ezekiel 38 war, this being a product of the sixth seal and then the day of the Lord. So let's get started. So with the sixth seal, I'm seeing some correlations first starting up with this total solar eclipse that's cutting across the U.S. On August 21st in another 10 days, actually. And here's some very basic information. The shadow produced by the solar eclipse is 70 miles wide. 70 is associated with the generation. I'll skip down the length of the whole duration of the solar eclipse as it traverses across the United States will be 1 hour and 33 minutes. But it starts in Oregon at 45 degrees latitude and it ends in South Carolina in 33 degrees north latitude. And I just thought, I see something with these numbers and I wanted to go ahead and check into that. And a little bit of this is repeat, but I wanted to go over the next couple of slides for those who haven't seen it and then get into the rest of my presentation. So the solar eclipse starts in Oregon and roughly at 45 degrees north latitude. I'm ignoring the longitude, but it just touches the beach when it traverses between Lincoln Beach and Depot Bay or Depot Bay. But on Lincoln Beach for the latitude, you have 44.85 latitude north. I'm ignoring, I'm just going 2 decimal places. So that rounds up to 45. And Depot Bay, that's also 48.81 degrees north. So if you round it up, you end up with 45 degrees north latitude. And then it leaves through South Carolina when it leaves the whole United States. And that's between the beach area of McClellanville, South Carolina, and Cape Romaine. And the coordinates for, again, just the latitude for McClellanville is 33.1 degrees north latitude, and for Cape Romaine, it's 32.99. And so again, it's at 33 degrees north latitude right here where it exits. So with those 2 latitudes of 33 degrees north latitude in South Carolina and 45 degrees north latitude in Oregon, I immediately saw a connection between the time period from that same solar eclipse on August 21st, 2017. There's 33 days until the Revelation 12 sign on September 23rd, 2017. And also there's 45 days from the solar eclipse to Sukkot, or the first day of Tabernacles, on October 5th, 2017, which is indicated by the full moon. So I think I think the solar eclipse, or God is telling us to take a look at these 2 dates, which is the September 23rd sign, which everybody is familiar with just about in the Christian community, and then October 5th being the first day of Tabernacles on the full moon. So I went ahead and superimposed the U.S. earthquake map with the path that this solar eclipse is taking. And in fact, Just in Time did the same thing. So I have 2 of his videos as well uploaded, parts 1 and 2. So take a look at those. But I noticed, it goes through some pretty dense earthquake, dense regions of the United States. So it crosses near the Cascadia region near Oregon where it enters the United States. And it traverses a little bit south of the Yellowstone caldera, which is still having multiple earthquake swarms. And it's still continuing to this date. And it passes through the northern part of the New Madrid Fault, and it exits through an earthquake region in South Carolina. So I was drawn to the Yellowstone caldera region and wanted to see what if there was any correlation there, just numbers wise. And I think I do see something. So I found this article in the Jackson Hole News and Guide that earthquake risk is bigger than the Yellowstone supervolcano, and this was put out on August 2nd, 2017. So the article, I won't read the whole thing, is basically saying that in August of 1957, there was a 7.3 magnitude earthquake because there was a fissure just west of Yellowstone that had slipped and it killed, I think it said like 60 people during that time. So, so they see an earthquake as a bigger risk. But for me, I feel like it's related to the sixth seal, which is not only the great earthquake, but when you see the moon turning to blood and the sun turning to sackcloth, that can't be a lunar and a solar eclipse at the same time. I've always presumed it's something like ash in the air that would blacken the sky, and thus the sun is darkened as well as the moon. So I wanted to see if I could get any indication of when the sixth seal would occur, and it seems to be indicating that it'll occur during the full moon. And so it says in Revelation 6:12, I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and this is Christ, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. But there's a footnote that says that in Revelation 12, it read as the whole or the full moon. And this being the whole or the full moon seems to be indicating that the sixth seal occurs during a full moon. And if you look at the Greek translation, this part highlighted in yellow and underlined, it has Selene which just means the moon, but with these nu and sigma and lambda nu, it means the full moon or the whole moon. Thus, again, this seems to be referring to the full moon. And looking at the lunar phases in October, you in fact do see on October 5th that there is a full moon, and it's the first day of Tabernacles. So I think putting it together, 33 days later is the Revelation 12 sign, while 45 days later ends up on the full moon on the first day of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, on October 5th, 2017. I believe this could be an indicator that the sixth seal is open on October 5th, and that's when the great earthquake will occur, possibly being related to Yellowstone. I won't say this is factual, but it does seem to indicate that there's a 33-day and a 45-day event after the solar eclipse. So I'm thinking possibly, again, caveat that the sixth seal might open, and that'll be the great earthquake. So I'm kind of switching topics a little bit, but I wanted to see where the majority of the swarms were occurring, the earthquake swarms in the Yellowstone region. And this is a seismograph that's produced by the University of Utah on August 3rd, so last week of 2017. So the majority of them seem to be within the circular region, which is about 45 degrees north latitude and 111 degrees west longitude. So in this case, I am going to start using the longitude and look at these numbers more closely. So then I wanted to see where does this line up with the solar eclipse that's occurring on August 21st. So now zooming out, this little red boxed in area right here is where the swarms are occurring in Yellowstone, and just south of that is where the pathway of the solar eclipse traverses. So I wanted to go directly south of that to see what time the eclipse hits directly south of Yellowstone. So totality occurs at 11:36 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and that the location of the center of that shadow that it produces just south, directly south of the Yellowstone earthquake swarms, is at 45 degrees north latitude and 111 degrees west longitude. So in my personal opinion, I believe there's something related to the sixth seal with the Yellowstone caldera and the earthquake swarms, and that being the culprit of the great earthquake that's produced in the sixth seal, and that'll darken out the sun and moon, the full moon, on possibly October 5th. So I feel like I had felt like there was something associated with these numbers, with again this time being 44 and 111, and then 1136, and so I just tried something a little unusual, and I wanted to look up, because Revelation is in Greek. I wanted to see if there's something associated with these numbers in the Strong's Concordance in Greek. So looking at the time, which was 11:36 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, I looked up the Strong's Concordance for 11:36, and it actually had Gog, and it's right here, Gog, which is used one time in the Bible, and Gog means mountain, but this is the king of the land of Magog, associated with Gog being the king of Russia, with the latitude associated with the solar eclipse when it was directly below the Yellowstone caldera, where the greatest density of earthquake swarms are occurring as of August 3rd. So that was at 45 degrees north latitude. So I wanted to look up the Strong's G44. And this, in fact, means a fishing hook or a small hook. And actually in the King James Version, it's just a hook. And then looking up the longitude of the solar eclipse when it was directly below the greatest swarm of earthquakes at Yellowstone, it's at 111 degrees west latitude. So I wanted to look up the Strong's G111, and it means abominable and unlawful thing. So I think that's how I ran into the Gog Ezekiel 38 information, because I just thought these three things, being Gog, abominable and unlawful thing, and a hook, I go, that's exactly what was talked about in Ezekiel 38. So in Ezekiel 38, I'll just read verses 1 through part of verse 4. So it says, "Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rush, which is Russia, Meshach, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rush, Meshach, and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks into your jaws, and lead you out with all your armies, horses, and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords." So this is pertaining to Gog and his allies going against to attack Israel. So I believe that, as Caleb B had said in his video, that the United States will be crippled or taken out of the picture, where we can no longer defend Israel, our ally. And I think the culprit, again, will be Yellowstone or the sixth seal. And I think this will be, again, the culprit potentially that takes out or cripples the United States, where we're not able to help Israel. And possibly this could occur by October 5th. Again, I'm not saying all these things will occur, but I'm kind of seeing that with the numbers that are being presented. And if something like that were to happen, so I found models that they were done in the spring, summer, fall, and winter, this being the representation of fall. They just did it for a mid-October timeframe. So this would be the distribution of ash produced by Yellowstone over, if it erupted over a 3-week period of time. So the West Coast, because of the east prevailing winds and the Gulf Stream, wouldn't be as affected, but just about the whole United States, including Texas and northern parts of Florida and the Panhandle, all the way through Maine, even southern parts, of Canada and northern parts of Mexico would all be affected. But even though the West Coast is not affected and the southernmost regions of Florida, this would greatly cripple the United States beyond repair. And even though these parts, these little few parts aren't affected, it would produce an instant nuclear winter, and it would cripple transportation of food and stuff. So people in these areas wouldn't have ash. They would be affected by a whole slew of other problems. So I wanted to look at known verses in the Bible that was directly related to the sixth seal and the day of the Lord. So in Acts chapter 2, verses 19 through 20, it says, "And I will shew wonders or signs in the heaven above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapors of smoke." So I believe this sounds, with the earth beneath, sounds pretty much like a volcano type situation. And the sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and notable day of the Lord come. And likewise in Joel chapter 2, verses 30 to 31, "And I will shew wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke," whereas the others had vapors. So again, that sounds like a volcano. "And the sun will turn into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible or awesome day of the Lord come." So again, the result of this blood and fire, pillars of smoke or vapor, turns the sun into darkness and the moon into blood. And in fact, that would be the case if Yellowstone were to erupt. So originally, I had thought the sixth seal that occurs before the great day of the Lord was a nuclear event because it spoke of blood and fire and pillars of smoke, which is in fact what you do see, and that produces a nuclear winter from all the soot that comes off of the atomic explosions. So I actually thought that might be the case, but I think it might in fact just be a natural event. It could be nuclear. I remember reading an article, though, that Russia had said that if the United States decided to come against them, that they would just basically lob a couple of nukes into Yellowstone and into the San Andreas Fault, and that would take care of the United States and cripple them. So I wanted to show you that. That has been proposed, and that has been something that has been stated by Russian scientists. So on April 1st of 2015, and this is in Business Insider, Military and Defense, let me scroll down some, and the title is "A Russian Doctor of Military Sciences Says Moscow Should Just Nuke Yellowstone if tensions boil over," excuse me. And then it goes on to say in the article, again, this was April 1st, 2015. So it said, and it's a short article, so I'll read it. "Earlier this week, the Russian president of the Academy of Geopolitical Problems outlined two geophysical weak U.S. regions to attack in order to combat NATO's aggression towards Russia. In this article, Konstantin Sivkov justifies the option of, quote, complete destruction of the enemy, end quote, because NATO has been, quote, moving to the borders or Russia." I think he meant of Russia. Sivkov, listed as a doctor of military sciences, and I think they meant to have an O, describes scenarios that involve dropping a nuclear weapon near Yellowstone supervolcano or the San Andreas Fault. And that's what he was talking about using if we start showing aggression towards Russia. And they recognize the Yellowstone caldera and the San Andreas Fault as two geophysical weak areas in the United States. So again, with Yellowstone producing so many swarms, and it's been going on for 2 months now, I actually think that Russia does take notice of this. The scientists do, and they do know that it's a, I guess, geophysical weakness in our topography in the United States. And so possibly the blood and fire and pillars of smoke are indeed caused by a combination of both. Russia doing something that was spoken of in that article, and then that trickling a domino effect and actually causing Yellowstone to go off and crippling the United States pretty severely, and thus us not being able to protect Israel, and that being Gog and his allies attacking Israel being in fulfillment possibly of Ezekiel 38 war. And so another Bible verse that most Bible scholars and everybody recognizes as being associated with the sixth seal as well as the day of the Lord. And that's in Matthew 24, verses 29 through 31. And it says in verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And almost everybody recognizes this as being the sixth seal. And then in verse 30, it says, then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And I had originally thought this would be the Revelation 23 sign, but if this in fact is occurring on the full moon of October 5th, which the solar eclipse is kind of leaning towards, it's correlating to those 2 days, being the 33rd day after the solar eclipse, being the sign of the Revelation 12 sign of the woman, and then 45 days later being October 5th, the first day of Tabernacles, which is a full moon. I think that could potentially, I'm not saying that it is, but could potentially be the day of the sixth seal. And with then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. So it would have to be in this situation after October 5th. And then it goes on to say, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the sign of the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds and from one end of heaven to the other. And this is the day of the Lord. So again, I don't know when the sign or what the sign of the Son of Man is. So I believe all these things will happen after the 5th of October. I have my opinions as to when this will occur, and I'll show you that, but I'm not saying this is how it's going to happen. So it seems to be lining up with the solar eclipse 33 days later. Here's the sign of the woman on September 23rd, the Revelation 12 sign, and then 45 days later is the full moon, which it seems to be saying in Revelation 12, the whole moon or the full moon, and that would be October 5th, and it is in fact a full moon, and that could be the opening of the sixth seal, which would start with the great earthquake and then leading to the sun and the moon being darkened, and that could potentially be Yellowstone. But also on this same date, on October 5th, 2017, you also see Saturn moving out of what is called the throne of God. And I've shown this in other videos in Stellarium. So that would in fact also be Satan and his fallen angels are kicked out of heaven down to the earth. That would be a momentous occasion for heaven, but woe to the inhabitants of the earth. And so I want to wrap this up with a pretty detailed outline of what's occurring. So this is a combination of things I've done before. I would encourage you to go back and look at some of those. So this is with Stellarium and what's going on actually in the heavens. So here's the solar eclipse. 33 days later is the sign of the woman, the Revelation 12 sign. 40 days later, which I believe is the sign of Jonah, after the solar eclipse is the Day of Atonement, and then 45 days later, that being the same time that Satan leaves the throne of God, and this is shown on October 5th in Stellarium, and that also being a full moon, possibly being the opening of the great opening of the sixth seal, being the great earthquake. And then you see the Draconid meteor shower occurs October 8th and 9th. and that seems to be indicating the dragon casting 1/3 of the stars to the earth. And then the dragon stands before the woman, Israel, who's travailing to give birth. And you see on that same date that the dragon is standing before the woman between October 8th and October 12th, and the woman being Israel. And then Mercury goes up to God into the throne, and that seems to be in fulfillment of Revelation 12, verse 5. And that starts on October 13th when the child is born. Again, I would encourage you to please listen to the dialogue that Caleb B. and I had on this whole second part of this timeline, which goes into more detail than I can here. And this video is getting pretty long, but I wanted to say that I think that the solar eclipse, starting at the 45-degree north latitude and then ending at the 33-degree north latitude, was in fact in correlation, saying that there's 33 days from the solar eclipse. It pointed to the Revelation 12 sign, and 45 days later it points to October 5th. And that's exactly the same day as the full moon and when Saturn leaves the area known as the throne of God in heaven. So I believe it could be, again, I'll caveat that, could be the sixth seal is open, and heaven seems to indicate the dragon standing before the woman Israel. Again, like Caleb B. and I have discussed, that if, why would the United States stand by and watch their ally not be protected, and they have to flee into the wilderness for 3.5 years without the U.S. protecting them? So I believe that the United States is severely crippled, and something like Yellowstone would be it. And again, those numbers, the time that the eclipse is directly south of where the earthquake swarms, greatest earthquake swarms are occurring to this date, seem to show the numbers 1136, which is Gog, 44, which is Hook, and 111, which is abominable or unlawful thing. Anyways, I wanted to bring this to you since we're about 10 days from the August 21st solar eclipse and what I'm seeing in terms of the numbers and how it correlates to the Revelation 12 sign and the first day of Sukkot, the full moon on October 5th, potentially being the sixth seal, which seems to be indicating the great earthquake produced at Yellowstone, whether it's just all natural or an event that Russia catapults this event, who's to say? But also with the numbers associated with the Yellowstone, when the solar eclipse is directly south of where the greatest number of earthquake swarms are occurring, it has the 1136, the 44, and 111. I wasn't expecting it to say Gog, Hook, or abominable. So I actually think that's actually saying that shortly after this event, the great earthquake, and when the sun and moon are darkened and the stars fall to the earth, that you will in fact maybe have the Ezekiel 38 war that transpires. Again, these are all things that I'm seeing numbers and how they correlate. Again, I'll caveat this and say that none of these things may in fact happen, but it's just what I'm seeing. And I thought I'd come to you and present it to you, and it may be beneficial. And so I wanted to get it out to you, especially with the August 21st solar eclipse occurring in about 10 days. So anyways, I hope everybody has a blessed weekend, and hopefully you can get out and see the Perseid meteor shower. They said it's going to be the brightest meteor shower in all of mankind. I believe it occurs at dawn, but you might want to check Google when it occurs in your area. It's cloudy here, and I'm sad that I can't get to see it, but hopefully maybe I'll get a glimmer of it on Sunday. But anyways, again, I hope everybody's having a blessed weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.